Hi everyone, it's Lucy. I just wanted to welcome you to this really short little recording of a piece of training that I did for eTeach members of staff during World Autism Acceptance Week. So the whole point of this session is just to highlight some really key things to further your understanding of ASD and hopefully as a practitioner enable you to do a couple of things to really enhance your effectiveness as an educator for students that you're supporting who are autistic. So the first thing I wanted to do is actually just to have a little kind of interactive section. So this is going to really help me highlight the main takeaway for this session. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a quick word association game. And those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see that I actually put this up as a poll. And really interestingly, well, we'll talk about what happened in a second. So I want you to think about, if I say the word sea slug, you're going to get some images maybe, or some words that straight away pop into your head. So just think sea slug. What words, if you had to think of descriptive words, or what images come into your brain? Now, a lot of people in the session that we did this morning at eTeach is we had slimy, we had disgusting, we had wet, we had, gosh, so many different ones. But all quite, I would say, negative. So not a positive thing, I don't think, to be slimy and disgusting. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what sea slugs actually look like. And what the reaction was this morning was one of kind of shock. Wow, a few people said. And the thing I love about sea slugs is how their name makes us think one thing, but actually their appearance and the way they are really challenges that. And I think that that's a great place to start our session today, in understanding that the label of autism, ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder, the scientific name, if you like, for autism, is one of a label really being quite a barrier to the success of that person. Because so many people put their own misconceptions and assumptions onto that individual based on what society has told them, without actually realizing that everyone is unique. If you've met one autistic person, everyone says this, it's a very well-known kind of phrase, you've met one autistic person. So I think where I wanted to start is understanding the autism spectrum, because in the past, it's almost been less autistic, more autistic, almost a linear view, which is absolutely not the case. The autism spectrum is a spectrum for a reason. It's not a line. You might have heard the terms like high functioning and low functioning. We don't really use these terms anymore because, again, they sort of lend themselves to more of a view of autism that is a line and linear in its sort of thinking. And what I like about this, this is Autism Sketches, I love some of the visuals that they create, is that it's so much more than that. And I don't want you to think, because what we all like to do is we like to have a tick list. Okay, if you do this, you get an A. We've all come from this real sort of almost tick box view of life, and people try and sort of almost put that onto autism. Okay, so what do I need to tick off to know if someone's autistic? And it's so not like that. And what I love about this is you can see there's all these different sort of parts of a person, traits, if you want to call them. It could be social skills, it could be having routines, it could be having sensory issues, it could be the want to stim, to self-soothe, it could be executive function, it could be things like demand avoidance. There's so many different parts of this spectrum. And if you like, every person will have a unique, almost DNA, if you like, or footprint or fingerprint, of where they sit on those different sort of areas of the spectrum. And that gives them a unique kind of profile. And some profiles have sort of, if you like, enough sort of these traits to be classed and to be diagnosed as autistic. And I think that that's the best way to think of autism. Definitely not a line. If I can really get you going away from today's session, just understanding one thing: autism is not linear. And every autistic person is unique. Now, you might hear of similar traits that are very common within autistic people. However, just be really wary of labeling and tick listing and tick boxing, that view of being able to diagnose someone, oh, that's a little bit autistic. Absolutely, it's not okay to say things like that. So what I hope that you'll take away from this session is you challenge your misconceptions and assumptions about a label. And that doesn't have to just be autism, although that is the focus of today's talk. It could be dyslexia, it could be ADHD, any of these learning additional needs sort of labels that we hear so commonly in school, for parents, for practitioners. In like this day and age, it really does seem that, whether it's that we're getting better at diagnosing things, people are more aware and accepting of these labels due to some really high profile kind of work done by lots of amazing influencers and scientists and researchers and educators. It's a really sort of unique place that we're in right now, but there's still an awful lot of misunderstanding and assumptions, because one of the sort of slight worries for us as educators is we like that sort of curriculum, that security of having a sort of almost like a model of everything. And actually, the best educators know to take that model, but think outside it. And so I would just urge you, with this in mind, that the biggest barrier to learning for a young person or a child with special educational needs is the assumptions that educators, society, parents make about them. And just, thinking back to the sea slug exercise at the beginning, we made assumptions there and they were really wrong. And, I think one of the most important things is that we see every person exactly as they are, a person. We identify what challenges they might have to access learning and social settings and all sorts of things. But we also identify and we don't limit our belief of what they're able to achieve. And I think that is really important. Because my slight concern, the more that we label and the more that these labels are accepted, is that there's still quite a lot of misunderstanding and assumptions made about what these young people can do. So what I wanted to quickly touch on is a really important thing to understand, and it's the reason that girls are often diagnosed or go under the radar for diagnosis, and that is masking. Now, masking is the process by which an autistic individual can sort of chameleon, I guess, is the best way of explaining it. Look at a situation that they're in, whether that be work, school, home, an unknown situation, and they're able to learn by looking at other people, mirroring body language, identifying sort of positive role models in that situation that they can then almost mirror and parrot and kind of learn and it's like a socially desirable experience for that individual in that setting. So let me give you an example. You often get parents going to school and saying, at home, we're really struggling. There's lots of meltdowns and things like that, especially with younger children, where maybe diagnoses hasn't happened yet. And schools say, oh, but they're absolutely perfect at school. And that could suggest that there is masking going on in the school setting, that they know how to walk in a line, they know what's expected of them, to sit, to listen, to, you know, do all of those things that society expects of them to be a good student in that school. But that takes so much effort for that young person that then when they go home in a more relaxed and informal and safe environment, that's when then the meltdowns happen. And that's because they've been storing up all that emotional energy to mask into the situation. And then when they get home to that place of safety and security, it sort of undoes, if you like. And I think one of the best ways as a parent, as an educator, to understand is that when an autistic young person has done something that is socially a challenge for them, even if they don't look like it's been a challenge and they're not presenting any signs of stress, is to give them time just to decompress. Now, that could be just allowing them to go and sit in the reading corner for 10 minutes and knowing that no one is going to come and interrupt them. That could be just allowing them to self-soothe and stim. There's so many different ways that you can support an autistic young person to sort of decompress after periods where they might have had to mask, even if we understand they've had to mask, but there's no actual distress signs that show, oh gosh, yeah, they, you know, that's been a challenge for them. It's about that innate understanding of us as educators to allow our students to be the best that they can be. And so predicting those times in the day where you might need to just give them a little bit of decompression time. And then I think that the other thing I wanted to sort of talk about in this same sort of setting is that it's almost like a social currency. Now, we do know that a trait that is often reported for many autistic people is being, let's say, and I know that I'm like this as well, slightly averse to lots of social situations unless they really have to. And I think that a really good way of understanding this is explaining it like a sort of social currency, almost imagining that you had £10 of little pennies at the beginning of the day. And when you go to that school, that, you know, situation where you've got lots of people, you're spending that money quicker than someone neurotypical. And so that will mean that you get what's called autistic burnout, you know, where you could get lots of different responses. It could be meltdown, it could be total introversion, it could just be that needing to just totally get away and decompress. You know, there's so many ways that autistic burnout can manifest itself and present itself in young people especially. But I think this understanding of how draining some social situations and school can be, because we haven't even talked in today's session about things like demand avoidance and, you know, and how that impacts on this social currency and spending. But I think that the one thing I just hope that this session, I would like you to go away having just it provoked a little bit of a difference in thinking maybe moving forward, is just being able to identify when you're making assumptions about an autistic young person, and just being able to sort of predict maybe if we know that they are maybe masking in certain situations, allowing them that time after a period of masking to decompress at school, ideally, because otherwise they go home and then it really can be quite challenging for parents, because they get them they get their children back when they need to decompress and possibly are already at autistic burnout mode. So that can be really challenging. So they are the main things that I hope in today's very quick session you can take away. And I guess I wanted to leave you with 2 actions just to further not really your understanding of autism, but, you know, just things that you can go away from this session and do. So the first thing would be to use the correct language. In England, we tend to use the autistic person, not saying a person with autism. Now, if you go over to the States, you'll find it's often the opposite way around. But my biggest because language is very important, not just with autism and in the autistic community, but across many, many things in education. my biggest tip is always to mirror the language that the person is that you're speaking to is using. So if you get a parent who describes their child as being a person, a child with autism, now that's possibly because they're moving through their own understanding of what this means. And so I would always just encourage educators to mirror the language that the person you are with is using, because that means that that's language that they are comfortable with. And then that will help to just show that you're listening and you're understanding where they're coming from. But as I say, the correct, should we say, use of the language would be an autistic person, because autism is a way of thinking. It is, it's not something that you can get rid of or reduce or cure. So it is part of the person. And so that's why we say an autistic person, not a person with autism. And the second thing would be just for your own sort of CPD and understanding is watching Chris Packham's Inside Our Autistic Minds. It's an amazing documentary series, quite recent as well. And it's probably one of the best pieces of CPD that I've ever done. And the fact that it's just on TV, everyone could watch it. I think society would be a better place if we all watched his documentary. So hopefully those two actions are things that you can go away with confidence to do. And if you do have any questions, obviously this is a recorded session, but if you do have any questions, you can reach out to myself, Lucy at Education Boutique, or obviously wherever you're watching this, there's probably going to be a comment section below. So you can absolutely also pop a comment below. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you found it helpful. And yeah, challenge your assumptions about autism.